I still remember the day everything changed. It was supposed to be a happy family celebration, a beautiful wedding filled with laughter, music, and joyful memories. My wife, Sarah, and I had been married for 3 years, and we were excited to attend her cousin's wedding together. We traveled to a small town where most of her relatives lived. It was the first time I would meet many members of her extended family. The wedding venue was decorated with colorful flowers and bright lights. Guests were arriving from different cities, greeting one another warmly. Sarah introduced me to many relatives, and everyone seemed friendly and welcoming. Among them was her younger sister, Emma. I had met Emma a few times before, but we had never spent much time together. She was cheerful, confident, and always full of energy. Throughout the day, Emma seemed unusually friendly toward me. She laughed at my jokes, asked me many questions, and often stood close whenever we were talking. At first, I thought nothing of it. After all, we were family. Sarah was busy helping her cousin prepare for the ceremony, so Emma often kept me company. As the wedding celebrations continued, guests gathered for dinner. Music played in the background while people danced and enjoyed themselves. Sarah was constantly moving around, helping relatives and taking photographs. Emma and I ended up sitting at the same table with several family members. We talked about work, travel, and our favorite movies. She seemed interested in everything I said. Later that evening, Sarah received a phone call from an elderly aunt who needed help getting to the venue. Sarah immediately left with another cousin to pick her up. Before leaving, she told me she would return in about an hour. The party continued. People danced, sang, and celebrated. Emma suggested we take a walk outside because the hall was becoming crowded and noisy. I agreed. The night air was cool, and the garden surrounding the venue looked beautiful under the lights. We walked along a small pathway lined with flowers. Our conversation became more personal. Emma spoke about her dreams, her struggles, and how difficult it had been to find someone she truly trusted. She admitted that she often felt lonely despite being surrounded by people. I listened carefully. She seemed emotional, and I wanted to be supportive. At one point, she looked directly into my eyes and smiled sadly. "You know," she said quietly, "Sarah is lucky to have someone like you." I laughed awkwardly and thanked her. I told her that Sarah was the best thing that had ever happened to me. For a moment, Emma looked away. Her expression changed, but I could not understand why. We continued walking until we reached a quiet corner of the garden. The music from the wedding hall sounded distant. The area was almost empty. Emma suddenly stopped walking. "I need to tell you something," she said. Her voice sounded nervous. "What is it?" I asked. She took a deep breath. "Before Sarah introduced us years ago, I saw your picture. She showed me photos when you two started dating." I smiled, unsure where the conversation was going. "I remember that," I replied. Emma looked down at the ground. "I thought you seemed kind. Different from most people." I thanked her again, thinking it was simply a compliment. Then she stepped closer. Before I could react, she quickly kissed my cheek. I froze completely. The entire situation happened so fast that I could barely process it. Emma immediately stepped back. "I'm sorry," she said. My heart was racing. "What are you doing?" I asked, shocked. She covered her face with her hands. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that." I looked around, hoping nobody had seen what happened. "Emma, this is not okay," I said firmly. Tears began to form in her eyes. "I know," she whispered. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she explained that she had admired me from the moment Sarah first told her about me. She said she never intended to cause problems and had tried to ignore her feelings for years. Seeing me again at the wedding had made those feelings stronger. I felt uncomfortable and confused. "Emma, I'm married to your sister," I said. "I know," she replied. "That's why I hate myself for feeling this way." I told her that whatever feelings she had, they could never lead anywhere. Sarah was my wife, and I loved her deeply. Nothing would ever change that. Emma nodded sadly. "I understand." We stood there in silence for a moment. Finally, she wiped away her tears. "Please don't tell Sarah," she said. "It would break her heart." That request immediately made me uncomfortable. Keeping secrets from my wife was never a good idea. "I don't know what to do," I admitted honestly. Emma looked terrified. "Please," she repeated. It was a mistake. At that moment, I heard voices approaching from the pathway. Other guests were walking toward the garden. Emma quickly composed herself and forced a smile. We returned to the wedding hall separately. A few minutes later, Sarah returned with her aunt. She looked happy and excited. When she hugged me, I felt guilty even though I had done nothing wrong. The rest of the evening was difficult. Every time I saw Emma across the room, I remembered what had happened. She avoided looking at me and spent most of her time with other relatives. On the drive home the next day, Sarah talked about how wonderful the wedding had been. She shared funny stories and showed me dozens of photographs on her phone. I wanted to tell her everything. Several times, I opened my mouth to speak. But each time, I hesitated. Part of me worried that the truth would destroy the relationship between the two sisters. Another part believed Sarah deserved complete honesty. For days, I struggled with the decision. Emma sent me a message apologizing again. She promised it would never happen again and begged me not to tell Sarah. I stared at the message for a long time. The secret weighed heavily on my mind. Every conversation with my wife felt different because I knew something she didn't. I loved Sarah more than anything, and I never wanted to hurt her. Yet I also knew that secrets have a way of growing larger over time. As I lay awake one night beside my sleeping wife, I realized I could not avoid the situation forever. Sooner or later, I would have to make a choice. And that choice would change all of our lives forever. For several days after the wedding, I lived with a secret that seemed to grow heavier each morning. Emma's unexpected kiss and her confession of feelings for me stayed in my mind constantly. I loved my wife, Sarah, and I knew I had done nothing wrong, yet I still felt trapped in a situation I never wanted. Every time Sarah smiled at me, I felt a wave of guilt. Not because I had betrayed her, but because I was hiding something from her. Emma continued sending occasional messages. They were short and respectful. She apologized repeatedly and promised that she would never cross any boundaries again. I rarely replied. When I did, my responses were brief and polite. I hoped the entire situation would disappear on its own. Unfortunately, life is rarely that simple. One evening, Sarah suggested that we visit her parents for dinner the following weekend. The moment she mentioned it, my stomach tightened. Emma still lived with their parents while saving money to buy her own apartment. I tried to remain calm. That sounds nice, I said. Sarah smiled. My family hasn't seen us since the wedding. The entire week, I felt nervous about the visit. When Saturday finally arrived, we drove to her parents' house. Sarah was excited and cheerful, but I was anxious. I had no idea how Emma would behave. When we arrived, everyone greeted us warmly. Her parents welcomed us inside, and the house quickly filled with conversation and laughter. Then Emma walked into the room. For a brief moment, our eyes met. She immediately looked away. I could see the embarrassment on her face. Throughout dinner, she avoided sitting near me. She spoke mostly with her parents and rarely joined any conversation involving Sarah and me. At first, I thought this was a good sign. Maybe she truly wanted to move on. After dinner, however, something unexpected happened. Sarah's mother asked Sarah to help organize some old family photographs upstairs. The two women disappeared into another room, leaving Emma and me alone in the kitchen for the first time since the wedding. The silence felt uncomfortable. Emma stood near the counter while I pretended to examine some decorations on the wall. Finally, she spoke. I meant what I said. I turned toward her. What do you mean? I meant that it was a mistake. I nodded. Then let's leave it in the past. She looked relieved. I want that too. For the first time since the wedding, we had an honest conversation. Emma explained that she had been struggling emotionally for years. She had compared every man she met to the image she had built of me in her mind. Over time, those unrealistic feelings became stronger. I created a fantasy, she admitted. Not reality. I appreciated her honesty. Feelings happen, I said. What matters is how we act on them. She nodded. You love Sarah. More than anything. A small smile appeared on her face. I know. At that moment, Sarah and her mother returned downstairs, and the conversation ended. For the next few weeks, things seemed normal. Then another problem appeared. One afternoon, Sarah was using my phone to order something online. While scrolling through my messages, she noticed Emma's name. My heart nearly stopped. Sarah opened the conversation. Fortunately, The messages contained only Emma's apologies and my brief replies. Still, Sarah looked confused. Why is Emma apologizing so much? I froze. The moment I had feared for weeks had finally arrived. I could lie. I could create an excuse. Or I could tell the truth. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I made my decision. I told her everything. I explained the walk in the garden, Emma's confession, the kiss on my cheek, and my immediate rejection. I left out nothing. As I spoke, Sarah's expression slowly changed. First came confusion, then shock, then sadness. When I finished, the room became completely silent. Sarah stared at the floor. I felt sick. Finally, she asked a question. Why didn't you tell me sooner? That question hurt more than any accusation. Because I didn't have a good answer. I was afraid, I admitted. Afraid of what? Afraid of hurting you. Afraid of damaging your relationship with Emma. Tears appeared in her eyes. You should have trusted me. She was right. I should have. That night was difficult. Sarah needed time alone to think. I respected her wishes and slept in the guest room. The next morning, she seemed calmer. We sat together and talked honestly for hours. She told me that the kiss itself did not upset her most. What hurt her was discovering that I had kept it secret. I listened carefully. She was not angry because I had done something wrong. She was hurt because she believed marriage should be built on complete honesty. Again, she was right. A few days later, Sarah called Emma. The conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. Neither sister spoke to anyone else afterward. Several more days passed before Sarah finally invited Emma to meet us. I was nervous. The three of us met at a quiet cafe. The atmosphere felt tense. Emma looked terrified. The moment she sat down, she started crying. She apologized repeatedly to Sarah. She admitted everything. She accepted full responsibility. For nearly an hour, the sisters talked openly. There were tears. There was pain. There was disappointment. But there was also honesty. Eventually, Sarah reached across the table and took Emma's hand. I love you, Sarah said softly. Emma cried even harder. I love you too. You hurt me. I know. It will take time. I understand. Watching them speak honestly felt like witnessing the beginning of healing. Trust could not be rebuilt instantly. But it could be rebuilt. Over the following months, things slowly improved. Emma started seeing a therapist to work through her emotions and self-esteem issues. She focused on building her own life rather than chasing impossible fantasies. Sarah and I also became stronger as a couple. The experience taught us the importance of communication. No matter how uncomfortable the truth may be, hiding it usually creates bigger problems. One evening, nearly a year after the wedding, the entire family gathered for another celebration. This time, everything felt different. Emma seemed happier and more confident. She talked about her new job and her plans for the future. At one point, Sarah left the room to help her mother prepare dessert. Emma and I found ourselves standing near the window. The situation reminded me of the wedding, but the feeling was completely different. She smiled. Thank you. For what? For being a good husband to my sister. I smiled back. She's easy to love. Emma laughed. I know. There was no awkwardness. No secret feelings. No hidden tension. Only mutual respect. When Sarah returned, she wrapped her arm around mine and smiled at both of us. In that moment, I realized something important. Families are not perfect. People make mistakes. Sometimes painful ones. But when honesty, accountability, and forgiveness come together, even damaged relationships can heal. The secret that nearly destroyed my marriage had ultimately taught us all a valuable lesson. Love survives not because people never make mistakes. Love survives because people choose truth, trust, and forgiveness when mistakes happen.